Hi, my name is Tyler. I'm an indie game developer working on my second game. This is the first episode of my devlog series about the development of my game. Welcome to the show. I recently released my first solo project, Shellkicker, on mobile back in June. After I wrapped up the project, I spent some time generating ideas for my next game, trying to figure out what I wanted to work on. So I thought about games I like and looked back at an old list of game ideas I had. One game type in particular that I could never shake the idea of was doing a 2D top-down version of something similar to Call of Duty Zombies. I've always enjoyed wave-based shooters and had always had an idea to make one, but never actually have executed on that. So I came up with an idea. The rough idea for the gameplay loop is this. It's a top-down 2D roguelike wave-based shooter. What a mouthful. Basically what I'm saying is enemies will attack the player in waves, and each time trying to destroy an object that the player will be trying to defend, which for now I'll just call the defense point. The player shoots enemies to kill them, and after successfully killing an entire wave, the player will get to choose an upgrade or perk to boost their performance for the next wave, and so on and so forth. Now that I had the idea, it was time to get started on the prototype. First things first, I needed a player sprite. So I cracked open a sprite and toiled away for hours creating my magnum opus. This would be my David, my Mona Lisa, the best work I'd ever created in my life. Beautiful. I then started out with programming the basics. I got basic 2D movement in and then got shooting implemented. I then added the single most important feature in any video game ever, screen shake. Nice. After getting the basics done, it was time to move on to creating enemies so that I had some semblance of gameplay. Once again, I spent countless hours in Sprite creating this magnificent creature, a creature so perfect that God himself would look upon it and say, "Damn, did I make that, or did that make me?" Perfection. After adding the enemy in, I created a health system so that I could do damage and then kill the enemy by shooting it. That worked, but something was lacking. In any wave-based shooter, the enemies all have something in common: pathfinding. They all pathfind either towards the player or towards something else that the player is meant to protect. This creates agency for the player to actually shoot the enemies and creates a challenge when either a lot of enemies overwhelm the player or particularly strong enemies come into play. Pathfinding meant AI, and AI meant I actually had to learn how to code AI. Fortunately for me, A-Star and Brackeys exist, so I didn't have to make everything from scratch as cluelessly. I was able to get basic pathfinding AI working pretty quickly, and I highly recommend using this A-Star package if you're interested in learning about or implementing pathfinding. It was super helpful. Anyway, the way it works in my game is that the enemies target this little point that the player needs to defend. They completely ignore the player and go straight for that defend point. Once they get there, they stop moving. Eventually, they'll deal damage to the defend point and have varied/more complex behavior, but for now this is good enough and is way more than I ever thought I'd be able to do with AI programming, which is any amount. Any AI programming is impressive to me. After getting AI pathfinding implemented, I decided to work on something that would help me better visualize what the game would look like and allow me to get a sense for what the map scale would be. Cameras. So just like any feature, I immediately went to the Brackeys YouTube channel and looked up a tutorial and discovered Cinemachine. Cinemachine is a Unity tool for more advanced camera controls than you would normally get just out of the box with the default Unity camera. It makes some more interesting camera behavior way easier than if you were to try to code it together from scratch. It seemed like it was getting the behavior that I wanted pretty easily, so I implemented it. Seemed pretty good, so I moved on to adding a cursor to the game. However, there was one small problem. Cinemachine wasn't really set up to handle the type of camera movement I was looking for out of the box. I knew I had a big fight on my hands. After adding a cursor to my top-down shooter game, there was one little problem. My Cinemachine camera system started breaking. A lot. I knew I had a fight on my hands. I got to work first by trying to better understand how Cinemachine worked and see if there was any way I could figure out how to get it to do what I wanted. I found some features that sort of did what I wanted, but nothing that fit perfectly. Then I tried figuring out how to script Cinemachine to do what I wanted, but that also failed. I spent several hours one day just wrangling Cinemachine in every way I could possibly think of, but I eventually just gave up with it. I found a different video on how to do a nuclear throne style camera that could be recreated in Unity, and I just now my camera did exactly what I wanted. It was functioning way better and actually behaved the way I wanted it to. After a fight that lasted several hours, I was finally at a good stopping point with the camera. After that, I did some small fixes and tweaks to bullet behavior, like deleting them when they go off screen or when they hit a wall, and fixed the pathfinding so that the enemies could actually navigate around the map properly without getting stuck or lost. And that's where I've stopped for now. I'm really happy with the progress I've made so far, especially where I worked on some bigger features that I never have before. Here's what I'm hoping to do for next time. I have a lot of thoughts about the theme of the game, art style, title, etc. that I'd like to flesh out a little bit more before sharing them with you all next time. I mainly want to work on adding the upgrade or perk system to the game so that I get a better feel for how the gameplay loop will actually work, and I've got some other little ideas I may try out, but nothing too solid just at the moment. Tune in next time to see what kind of progress I'm able to make on the upgrade system and what I'm thinking for the setting, art, and more. I'm Tyler Haddad. Thank you so much for tuning in. Be sure to subscribe so that you know when the next episode airs. Thank you, and see you next time.